Gators, and sports fans. Get all your Gator talk, news, analysis, and opinions on the PodUp with Matthews in the Morning podcast. Find us on your favorite podcast platform or watch us on Facebook Live between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. every weekday. PodUp, because we are Gator fans. So say it's great to be a Florida Gator.
Good morning and welcome to a Thursday edition of PodUp with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Got a good show lined up today. We have the one and the only Johnny Cornell, better known as JC, going to join us for pretty much the entire day. We had Coach Mike Weiner was supposed to join Jackie Spreads, but he's an assistant for the Mavericks. There's a schedule conflict, so we went to our backup. Coming off the bench, baby.
That's right.
Like Kyle Trask right now, JC.
That's right. I'm coming in out of the bullpen for you, QB. Good to be with you this morning. And, we got a little cloudy day here in Gainesville, but, a lot happening, of course, in sports, as you know, and we've got a lot to look forward to. I'm hoping at least here in the next 30 or some odd days, because I keep thinking about September 26th. And that's when football is supposedly going to start here in the Southeastern Conference. And I'm really glad that Greg Sankey and the guys there have made the move not to cave to what some of the other conferences like the Big Ten and the Pac-12 are doing. And I think it's important that, they continue on the schedule that they're on. The testing continues. The protocols stay in place. They have now announced capacities, although I haven't heard Florida's yet, unless you have some of these other schools like Alabama are going to let 20% of the capacity of the stadium be completed for their games, their home games, and some of the other schools. But I did find it interesting, some of the things we heard this week, specifically from the Big Ten, where Ohio State Athletic Director Gene Smith said that even though they've made a decision to postpone the fall season, they are looking at this as a temporary delay, meaning they are planning at some point in 2021, sooner than later, to try to play football. How much credence do you give that, QB?
Well, I do know for a fact that thousands of family members, parents, are going to be at the Big Ten home office tomorrow in Chicago, Illinois.
Yeah.
They're pissed off, and they have every right to be pissed off, not only because there's been word that there was not even a vote taken by the presidents. The leadership in the Big Ten is horrendous. I saw an interview with Urban Meyer, who, still works in the Big Ten. He said it is going to be catastrophic. That's the word he used, catastrophic, for the Big Ten if they do not play football this year.
Well, and I found it interesting that the athletic director at Ohio State is actively planning for winter and spring seasons for all sports, including the return of football. So that's what he was quoted as saying. And that doesn't just mean football. That means all of it. And I just don't know how realistic that seems right now.
I don't know how realistically you can play a spring football season. I don't think that's possible. I do think the Big Ten is not done yet. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that they're not playing football this year.
Yeah.
With all the parents, there's like these lawsuits coming out now that I was reading on Twitter. These parents are extremely upset because this is a small window of an opportunity in their lifetime that they have a chance to do something they'll never be able to do again. And it's being taken away from them for really, I don't want to say for no reason, but you're going to sit here and tell me that the Big Ten have these so-called specialized doctors that know something that the SEC's doctors don't know. And they want to blame myocarditis on it, if I pronounce that correctly.
Right.
Myocarditis. I have a cardiologist that lives in my neighborhood. Anytime you get sick, there's a part of myocarditis that has to do with your heart. I didn't really, he was way above my pay level.
Yeah.
And I'm understanding what he's talking about. But basically, if you just get a head cold or like the regular flu, it affects your heart. So, and the SEC and the University of Florida has been testing with EKGs and all different types of heart tests ever since I played here. They continually do it. We've had kids that have come in here, highly rated kids, that once they do their EKGs and their other heart tests, you know what? They don't play football.
Yeah, yeah.
They still stay on scholarship. We had one, like, I think his name was Randy Russell, like 2 or 3 years ago. So it blows my mind. And then you got the leadership of Kevin Warren, the Big Ten commissioner, who, he works for the presidents. I understand that, but he can't answer any questions because I don't think he believes anything that he said, because he's letting his own son, and I know I've beat this like a dead horse, his own son is playing football at Mississippi State.
Yeah, and he won't talk about it. He won't talk about it. It seems like a total dumpster fire on a public relations front for that conference. And there was an open letter that contradicted what the Minnesota president and the Penn State athletic director now says was there was a vote to cancel the season. Well, we didn't get that transparency about that decision. And I didn't hear anybody talking about a vote. I think they just unilaterally made that call just literally 6 days after they came out with a schedule. And that's where a lot of the confusion and anger, I think, comes from, QB, is that they didn't have the transparency that explained their decision. And you've got a lot of contradictions. So when you have a commissioner who, as you said, has family playing football, but then says it's not safe to play football, it doesn't make any sense. And it certainly contradicts the decision that it seems like he unilaterally made by virtue of whatever he was told or whatever he decided to do with an open platform to make that decision. And one person making that decision, to me, seems very, very, very questionable. So I agree with you. I think it's ridiculous how this guy can sit there and pontificate over his decision, but then say, oh, well, but my kid's good down in Mississippi. So it's nuts. And I don't think that story's over yet. Now, I think it is in the Pac-12, QB, because I just don't know.
The Pac-12, my sources have told me that the Pac-12, the statement that they released to the not to the Big 12, but the statement they released, a couple of weeks ago when they said they were not playing football, had already been written like 3 or 4 months ago. They just had to change the. That's what my sources told me. But I saved this quote from the final Twitter. It comes from the athletic director, Sandy Barber at Penn State.
Right.
He says, quote, "It is unclear to me whether or not there was a vote. No one's ever told me there was. I just don't know whether there actually was a vote by the chancellors and presidents."
Well, I mean, that is an unmitigated disaster when you have a flagship university representing basically the entire Northeast at Penn State, and you have the leader of that athletic department saying something that contradicts exactly what the so-called collective had agreed upon. So these guys are just spinning this really badly. I don't think they really knew what they wanted to do. They just want to take an easy road out, but they're finding out that road has some bumps on it.
Yeah, and then I also heard yesterday afternoon that it was some serious talks that if the Big Ten, with all these parents going to be showing up tomorrow at the league office in Chicago, if they still don't get heard and a change is made, it was Ohio State, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nebraska,
Iowa,
and Iowa. I think I may have just only been 5 teams. They're going to play each other home and home, but they were already starting to play some kind of little conference.
Well, and there were also reports that came out that we consider credible that the Ohio State president, Christina Johnson, would not vote for canceling the season. I mean, she knows the financial implications, the fact that this virus has a 99.64% survival percentage. Certainly, it's no fun getting sick, and the risks is high. You know, Alabama's campus opened, I think it was a week or so ago, and there was a big crowd outside of a bar, and the president had to make some comments about social distancing and the fact that there were kids and parents out there without masks on, and all of these things that would be considered really questionable right now at this time. But and you know, we don't need it to be made more difficult than it already is, QB.
Right. But here's my thoughts on that. Okay. Yeah, it didn't look good for the people, the parents, the kids partying wherever it was in Tuscaloosa. That has no bearing on the football team.
On football, right.
It has nothing to do with football, because the football team at every university is somewhat quarantined. Now, they all live off campus. A few probably live on campus, but you got them, you know, they're at the facility by 7 a.m. Yeah. And then they don't get home until like 8 o'clock. And these are some long days, folks. I highly doubt any player is going out on the town. And they also know how selfish it is as a player if you are that one guy that is out of players, and then you come back and you get affected because they're tested 2 and 3 times a week. The safest human beings in America right now are college football players, NBA and NHL players.
Yeah. Well, and the NHL players are in Canada, and they have had absolutely zero issues
with
NBA positive tests. And same with the National Basketball Association. So they just made a decision to do it this way. It seems to have worked to this point. I don't expect it will change. And I think that there is a way you can work around things if you want it to happen. Part of me almost thinks, QB, and this is just my theory that I cook up when I'm out golfing or doing whatever I want to do. And part of me thinks, and it gets almost political to an extent, but there are very, very liberal presidents in Minnesota, in Wisconsin, and certainly in Michigan. There are also there's also a lot of in Pennsylvania, I believe, and I think they just want to toe the line. I don't think they want to seem to be any different than what we're hearing from the national political landscape. And I know these governors aren't necessarily football players, but these are publicly funded state institutions, QB, and there has to be some sort of transparency, and we didn't see that. And so I think there's also a political element to it, and that's just
Speaking of that, I don't get into politics. Everybody has their own beliefs, but I'm going to read to you what was tweeted out a few days ago. States with Republican governors playing high school football this fall, 25 out of 26. States with Democratic governors playing high school football this fall, 7 out of 22. 2 are still undecided. Like I said, we don't talk politics on this show. I could care less what your thoughts are or any of our.
But that's logic. But isn't that logical to make that assumption that there is some sort of influence there?
What's funny to me is think about the state of Ohio has produced tons of really good football players. They're passionate about football. Would you say yes, the state of Ohio? Okay,
absolutely.
So think about we actually have a friend that is an Ohio State. He's a better friend of yours than mine, but we both know him. He loves the Ohio State Buckeyes. Think about this.
Loves them. Yeah.
The Cincinnati Bengals, the Cleveland Browns, the Cincinnati Bearcats, and every high school in the state of Florida, the state of Ohio, is going to be playing football.
Going to be playing football.
No Buckeyes.
Yeah, right. And that's why I think Gene Smith felt that pressure to at least say something to kind of get people to have a slither of hope. But I think we've known up to now that by getting your hopes up, you're only allowing yourself to get really disappointed down the road because there seems to be some sort of mandate that is underway that regardless of whatever numbers come out, and a lot of those numbers questionable, as I've said in the past, are going to dictate all of our decisions. And I just don't think your fear has the right to influence or interfere with people's need to send their kids to school and play football, which is a huge financial entity.
Oh, no doubt. We got a Facebook Live comment here brought to you by Meldon Law, where you matter most. Eric says, good conversation, Shane and Johnny C. The SEC wants to take the lead and show how football can be played safely. Go Gators.
Oh, and I appreciate that, Eric, because I think he makes a great point. There has to be some leadership. We have not had leadership in quite some time. I was worried for a while about what the SEC's plan was because it seemed like they wanted to sit back and just wait to see what everybody else was doing, which in a way can be a strategy and probably was theirs all along, but it left people hanging for a while. And then when the Big Ten came out and the Pac-12 came out, they were hoping that the rest would just fall in line. And I really think, and he scored a lot of points, meaning the athletic director with me, because I haven't been a big fan of his, but Sankey scored a lot of points with me by coming out and saying, your decisions do not dictate what we do down here and how we run our business. Now, I think there is a certain level of caution that you have to take, as we all know. But these guys are making a huge decision to try to make this happen, and a lot of it's going to be put on their shoulders. So there is pressure here on the decision makers that things work out smoothly. But if they do, they will look like heroes, and the clowns up in Ohio and Michigan and Minnesota and Iowa and the folks in Chicago specifically will look like idiots, and they will have a lot to answer for if it's able to be put up. Because these guys they've had 4 months to get something planned in the event we got to where we are today. They've had a lot of time to think about this, and I think they finally have put it into motion.
Refresh your vehicle and your brand with a vehicle wrap from WrapSpot. August is your lucky month at WrapSpot. Mention promo code Shane and receive 13% off your vehicle wrap. Johnny C will be getting his mug wrapped on his nice, sweet Corvette. Thanks to our friends at WrapSpot. We got another Facebook Live question here. It comes from Eugene, and it's brought to you by Meldon Law, where you matter most. Eugene wants to know, he says, it's great to hear JC and his honest opinion back on the show. Who does he see in the SEC championship game now that the schedule is out?
Well, I've looked at the schedule, and we should get into the scheduling a little bit now and try to focus a little bit on the football aspect of it. And I read a nice piece on Twitter from a guy named, I want to have to credit him, Connor O'Gara. And he wrote a piece about the schedule specifically. And I think a lot of the scheduling will have to do with who survives this, because for the first time ever, we're going to have 10 SEC games, which I think is fantastic. I love that, even more than 12 games with 2 subsidy games. And I think this is going to have some stickiness to it, QB, going forward. Now, I know the SEC has always wanted to just have 8 games because it gives them a chance to play that out-of-state or out-of-conference in-state rival. We can still do that with 10 SEC games or 9 SEC games, but I think the conference scheduling is very interesting with the way they did it. Some teams obviously more happy than others. Having said that, to answer Eugene's question, before we go through any of the scheduling, I've got to say it's going to be Alabama against Florida. And Florida is going to have the chance to beat Georgia this year because Georgia, who is it? JT Daniels? Is that the guy that they're running out there at Georgia?
We don't know about him yet. It's the kid from Wake Forest, Jamie Newman.
Oh, Jamie Newman. Okay, but there's also a JT Daniels from Southern Cal that transferred over.
He's coming off of ACL surgery.
Okay.
That's why he lost his job last year. And I think he's eligible through the NCAA, but he's still having some issues with his knee, from what I hear.
Well, and that's unfortunate for him. I was never that impressed with him anyway at USC for all intents and purposes. But Jamie Newman's going to have a lot on his plate. There's a high expectation at Georgia. He's got big shoes to fill in Jake Fromm, who was a winner. And so I'm going to go with the experienced quarterback, who is Kyle Trask in the East. And I actually really do believe that Tennessee is going to be a tough game because I love Pruitt. I think he's a very good coach. And for some reason, their momentum at the end of the year, I think, will transfer over into this year. They start off at South Carolina. If Tennessee wins that game and looks good winning it, I think Tennessee could be a team you have to keep your eye on. But the scheduling is very important, I think. And I think Florida has a great chance to beat Georgia because Georgia's got so much to replace. They'll be good defensively, but Florida's got, I think, the most depth coming back. So, I'm not just saying that because I'm engaged, because everybody knows it doesn't matter to me. I'm going to tell you who I truly think will win, but I think Florida will do it this year because I think Florida has the right scheduling in place. We'll go through that. But I also like the way that they match up with Georgia, even though that game is in November. It's not at Halloween on that weekend. I don't think it matters. It's still going to be in Jacksonville. I don't think that's going to matter either because we're not going to have a full stadium. I just think it's going to be one of those days where Florida has has more success than Georgia. Georgia is going to be really good. We all know this, but the quarterback position, as you know, is the most important position in sports probably, and certainly in football. So I think that's where Florida has the advantage.
Does
that make sense?
That was a great quote. Quarterback is the most important position, regardless of what level of football you play. We got some Facebook Live questions here brought to you by Meldon Law, where do you matter most? David wants to know, hey, guys, I'm listening on YouTube. Shane, do you see my comments on that platform? I'm going to have our producer figure that out, David. I'm not technology sound to figure all that out. David also wants to know, does anyone else want a poster of the SEC schedule to commemorate this year? I'm sure some of our listeners will. And our good friend Steve has a question or a comment here brought to you by Meldon Law, where you matter most. He says, could all this instability in the Big Ten and Pac-12 lead to another ripple in conferences in the future and shifting things to separate the Power Five completely from the Group of Five and possibly the end of the NCAA as we know it?
Well, that's a very loaded. I mean, that's a tough question to answer. We've got so much going on outside of the field, so to speak, and I've mean, what do you think? I don't.
Well,
I don't know.
here's we have Buddy Martin on our show every Tuesday morning, and Buddy's been preaching these super conferences for years, and I get it. He's like you, JC. He does not want to see Florida play South Alabama, or Alabama play UAB.
Right.
I get it. I totally understand from a fan's perspective, but I look at it from a former player, a parent, and a former coach's perspective. It gives those kids, and I say this pretty much on every day on my show, and I apologize if people are tired of hearing it, but it gives those kids at the South Alabamas and the Troys of the world, when those guys' dreams are what? They want to play big boy football. They want to be Gators. They want to be Crimson Tide. They want to be LSU Tigers, but for whatever reason, size, speed, maybe grades, they have to go to the smaller schools. But they're getting their school paid for. They're giving them an opportunity of a lifetime to maybe enhance and go to the NFL. But there's nothing like those kids, the one game when they get to walk into Tiger Stadium or Bryant-Denny and play against the big boys. That's an experience of a lifetime. That game's going to be taken away from them. Plus, I talk about money. It's what keeps their programs going. So what I've been proposing, because I think once we play these 10 games in the SEC, there ain't no going back. You ain't going to be able to go back.
I agree.
So you play your 12 games next year, play 12 SEC games. You have one so-called cupcake. I meant 10 SEC games. You have your one cupcake game. So those schools, you can help them out. And then you got your one Florida State game. So I think that'd be a pretty think about 10 SEC games, Florida State, and then you throw in a South Alabama or Troy or somebody. Well, that's pretty good.
No, I could compromise with that as a season ticket holder. I would say, yeah, sure, that sounds great. But it's when you line up Kent State, Southern Mississippi, and East Carolina all on the same schedule with the 9 games. Outside of those, the one out-of-conference game and then 8 conference games, it gets people kind of turned off by it. I apologize for the lawnmower.
We can't hear him.
Okay, good. But the thing is that I think fans deserve, with the amount of money that is being thrown at this entertainment, basically, they deserve to have their full, commitment realized with the best possible product on the field. And that does not give them that. I get it that these programs need money, but what's wrong with just letting them all play together, have a TV contract set aside for those smaller schools in one big round robin type of world that they could live in, with games on Friday night or something, or Thursday. And granted, I know that's high school football night, but you have to do something to keep them alive. And TV would be the way to do it, because I know that a school could come here to Florida, get a check for $1 million, and then blow it out. God bless you. And then blow it out later in the week. But I just don't know, and I agree with the question. The guy who sent the question is that this is tough for people to support when you have so many other things that you could spend your money on, and so they kind of get forced into it.
Let me do this, JC, because I did this with Buddy.
Okay.
Let's say we had little Johnny Cornell IV, your son, okay. And he played quarterback. He played quarterback at Oak Hall. Pretty good player. Oh. Had an opportunity, but he's a little short, really good athlete. But he ends up signing with Furman.
Okay.
He's a Purple Paladin.
Right.
You get the schedule, and the Purple Paladins are going to play the Clemson Tigers. Would you be excited for your kid to have that opportunity?
No.
You're crazy.
No, I'm not. Here's why. I would be scared that I don't know. I would be scared that it would be embarrassing. I would be scared that it would expose the reason why he wasn't drafted or recruited by Clemson. And I would have a lot more comfort watching him play Western Carolina and racking up a big yardage. Now
you have no competitive spirit in your body, JC.
It's not about that, QB. It's not about competition. You know why? Because we already know the result. So what? Let's say he throws an 85-yard go route for a touchdown and then throws 3 interceptions and gets his leg broken because Cleveland Farrell decided to fall on him the wrong way, who he wouldn't have played against VMI. There's a risk anytime you walk out there. You could get hurt against UT Chattanooga. I get it.
Trust me, you would be so excited. You'd have the video camera, so jacked to go play Clemson. I disagree with that.
Well, so what would I have said? Yes, sure. I'd love to see him play against Clemson, get blown up.
I say Clemson. Wouldn't you love to see him take a snap at Bryant-Denny Stadium against your beloved Crimson Tide? How cool would that be?
Well, I don't know what the difference is.
There is no difference. My point is, that's why I'm telling you, because you didn't play, you didn't coach, and you don't understand from the perspective of a player or a coach, because that's their dream to do that.
Well, you told me as a parent, okay? You asked that question as a parent.
But every parent would love to see their kid play in the swamp, no matter what team you're on.
Well, I wouldn't. Well, okay, so great. He gets to say that in September in the year 2020, he got to play in the swamp, and it wasn't that good.
Say that again?
He got to play. Okay, so let's say I could tell all my friends and family that, yeah, Jack got to play in the swamp against Florida, and it was very difficult.
Well, my whole point to this is, doesn't mean they're going to lose the game. Georgia Southern beat Florida. You know, Urban played. I saw this in his interview too. Urban, when he was at Bowling Green, he played 5 Power 5 schools, never lost any of them. What do you think?
Okay.
What do you think those Bowling Green players feel?
Well, look, I think they caught these teams at the right time, obviously, because you're not going to roll Georgia Southern down here.
It's not about wins and losses. It's about the college experience and helping these smaller tiered schools have money to continue their programs. And
I see that, but I don't think that should be required on the back of the booster and the season ticket holder at Florida. That has to be worked through some private financing or through television. And honestly, I just don't see the attraction. I just don't. And I know that these programs need money. Everybody needs money. All programs need money. They should be able to stay in their neighborhood and figure out a way to make football happen. Your expenses aren't going to be nearly as high as they are at places like Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. So that's one place you can start. Tennessee Chattanooga can take the damn bus to Wofford, and VMI can take the bus to Richmond.
Well, they already do that.
Things like that can happen. Well, okay, great.
That.
So then why do they need $2 million from some season ticket holder in Clemson?
I'm coming to you again. If your kid was in those programs, you would think differently. I can promise you that. I can promise you that. At Center State Bank, we put business first. We are the largest community bank in the state of Florida and understand that small businesses need a community business partner that they can rely on. Center State has 5 convenient Alachua County locations to serve you better. Center State Bank, member FDIC. We're going to take a first time out of the program. When we come back, we'll continue this discussion about college football. We'll talk a little NHL, hockey, NBA, a little bit what's going on in the sports world. Golf is cranking up. They have a few more events.
Yeah.
But should be a lot of fun. You're watching and listening to PodUp with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security Systems Studios. Be right back.
Hey Gators, this is Coach Steve Spurrier. PodUp with Matthews in the Morning. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
We want to take this moment to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Our gridiron sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Area Rug Masters, your number one choice in Gainesville for all your area rug cleaning services. Meldon Law, where you matter most. Peachland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte. Our touchdown sponsors are Campus USA Credit Union, Celebration Point Town Center, The Digital Mortgage Guy, Adams Ribs, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Center State Bank, Gator Bait Media, Davis Gainesville Chevrolet, Miapa Latin Cafe, Gators Dockside, Okido America Martial Arts and After School, Doreen Weeby Realtor, Caldwell Banker MM Parish, Radware, Style Cuts, Wrap Spot, Ironwood Golf Course, TB Financial, Chris Doring Mortgage, Meadowbrook Golf Course, Darshakow Insurance, Pomodoro Cafe, MB Listings, Big Mills Cheesesteaks, Cornerstone Financial Group, McDonald's of Gainesville, My IT Master, 84 Lumber, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, Chick-fil-A on Archer Road, Aver and Smith, personal injury attorneys, and Gainesville Neon and Signs. If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, you can visit our website, podupwithshane.com, and click the advertise button or call Freddie at 352-284-3733. Again, thank you for all the great businesses that support the show. Please remember, if you like what we are doing here, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
Welcome back to this Thursday edition of PodUp with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Celebration Point, that's where the Gators go to celebrate. With premium brands like Bass Pro Shop, Tommy Hilfiger, Hotel Indigo, Nike, Medici's, Regal Cinemas. And coming soon, the HBC's new restaurant, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, and Visor's Rooftop Bar. We will see you at Celebration Point, where the Gators come to celebrate. Thursday show, Johnny Cornell, JC, what's happening?
I got a guy mowing the sidewalk over here.
Well, we can't hear him, so don't worry about it. Also, I want to let people know this, JC, this is for you. The deal is up, and it is so good. It's the Campus USA and Davis Chevrolet biggest sale of the year.
Oh.
They will put you in a new car between August 20th, which is today, and August 23rd. The lowest interest rates of the year, a free $100 gift card, and no payments for 90 days. Valid on Davis Chevrolet. You can go get you another Corvette. You can put a different picture from Rap Spot on the other Corvette.
God, such great planning there. It's such a great deal at Davis. That's good. Yeah.
So, JC, let's briefly talk about the SEC schedule.
Okay, so
your thoughts?
Yeah.
Did the SEC boys in Birmingham protect the big boys in this deal?
Well, it's either that or they told the 4 new coaches, welcome to the conference. You got Lane Kiffin playing Florida. You got Sam Pittman playing Georgia. You got Mike Leach playing LSU. And the guy at Missouri gets to go to Alabama. Or gets to play Alabama. And I think that was either that was a coincidence or that was certainly the plan. But that first week's games, something about that first week, QB, when you have Alabama, Missouri, Florida, Mississippi, Georgia, Arkansas, Kentucky, Auburn, Mississippi State, LSU, South Carolina, Tennessee, and A&M at Vandy. There's something about that first week that makes me think that if, God forbid, something popped up and forced them to push it back an extra week or something, that they could just sacrifice those games and say, okay, we'll move on to week 2 if we do it all, because there are no traditional rivalry games in that first week. So the first week's games that stick out to me, and I really feel bad for Florida fans. I mean, I really, really feel bad because when they had that ridiculous 8-game schedule, it was very rare that you would get to play everybody on the other side within 6 years. In fact, you didn't. So the year that Florida fans get to potentially go to Oxford, Mississippi, and enjoy the Grove, well, forget it, because you're not even going to be able to tailgate, much less even go into the game. And I haven't heard that to be the case with the tailgating, but I know at Mississippi State and at Alabama, they are not allowing tailgating, which is totally antithetical to what the experience on those campuses and in those towns is all about. Okay, because the game is important, but I can promise you, with somebody who maybe doesn't have a kid playing, the event or just going to the game is part of the experience of that weekend and having everything that happens before. So to get to the scheduling, I think it's very interesting how that first week fanned out. And I think Kentucky and Auburn might be the game that is considered the most competitive, at least on paper. It looks that way to me. Have you looked at the first week? Do you care about that?
I think the Florida Ole Miss game is intriguing just because we all know the great play caller that Lane is.
Yeah.
I don't know how great Ole Miss has struggled defensively the last few years. But it's a game that could be kind of dicey. I think all the games, we don't know how anybody's going to play week 1.
No, I know.
Ball. I mean, I like Florida's chances to have a good year because they have the whole staff coming back and they got a lot of their skill guys coming back. So, we'll see.
Well, and then I go through the schedule. There's some 4-game stretches that are very interesting to me. How would you like to be Arkansas and know that on Halloween you play at A&M, then you get Tennessee at home, you have to travel to Gainesville, and then play LSU? For a 4-game stretch, that has to be the hardest of all of the teams that play throughout the year. Florida has a 4-game stretch that I find very difficult as well, because you've got a trip to College Station. Now, again, you have to remember that these games are not going to have full capacity in terms of the environment, the fans, the energy, so forth, but it's still a trip. So you're playing, if you're the Florida Gators on October the 10th, you're playing at A&M. You then follow that up with LSU and then a team that's been a traditional pain in Florida side, Missouri, both at home, but then the Georgia game. So that's, I think, a very interesting four-game run. LSU has a very difficult four-game run with Florida, South Carolina, at Auburn, and Alabama. Those three of those four teams potentially could be division contenders. And then, of course, anybody Vandy plays is tough. So I looked at that, and I think those are some really difficult four-game stretches. And on the flip side of that, you've got some more four-game stretches that have a lower degree of difficulty. And I'm reading this from that fella's column. But Florida at one point will play Arkansas, not somebody you would be that scared of at this point on August the whatever date it is. Then you've got Vanderbilt, Kentucky, and Tennessee. So of those four games, there's probably not one team on there with the exception of maybe Kentucky that you're really going to run from and think that maybe that's not going to be a good game to win. Now, Tennessee on December 5th, QB, is going to be very interesting because I think it's the first time the Gators will play Tennessee at the end of the season since the 9/11 game when they came down here, and that which I think was Spurrier's last home game as coach for the Gators. So that trip to Knoxville on December 5th, you better bundle up if you plan on going for whatever reason you would go. Maybe by then they'll let more fans in the stadium by December. Who knows? But that's going to be an interesting trip to play a game in 20-degree weather, which I expect would be the case in Knoxville.
Speaking of that game, we got a text on the Titan Mar text line. It comes from Daryl. Daryl says, guys, the almighty Vols always talk about how good they are at the end of the year. What do you think about Florida playing them in December? You know, right. I do think Jeremy Pruitt and his staff did a good job because when that Tennessee team that played in the Swamp this past year was one of the worst football teams I've seen in the Southeastern Conference in a long time. They got better. They won a bunch of games at the end of the year. However, they didn't beat anybody worthy in the league. You know what I'm saying? It was the Vanderbilts. No. But they still won the game. And
they went to a bowl game and won it too.
Well, only because Indiana kind of gave it to them, a bunch of goofballs, turnovers and things of that nature. But my point is, we'll see. We'll see if that game means a lot when we get there. But Tennessee's got to beat somebody worth the darn before I start believing it.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And I mean, it is a show me issue. Georgia not having LSU on the schedule, I thought they caught a break there. And I think Auburn always has the hardest schedule in the league because their permanent crossover team is Georgia, and they always play Florida, and they always play Alabama. So Auburn always plays.
Auburn doesn't always play Florida.
No, I'm sorry. They always play Georgia. Excuse me. They always play Alabama, and they always play LSU. So
Arkansas's got the hardest schedule in the history of college football.
Well, right now, yeah. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Arkansas really got the shaft on the scheduling. And I do think it was by design because I think you've got some teams like Arkansas, Missouri, we know they're not going to be the teams that represent the league at the end of the year if there is a championship game. So, they've got a long way to go. I think it'll be fun to watch what Felipe Franks can do at Arkansas. I think that'll be interesting that he's going to be coming back.
They ain't gonna win a game.
Well, I mean, they didn't win a game last year either. And this again goes, remember, we're playing in the coronavirus season, and who knows who's going to be in, who knows who's going to be out, who knows who's going to get sick, all of these intangibles.
I'm gonna go out on a limb right now, and less than 2%. I'm just throwing a number out there. The football players ain't gonna get sick. Here's the thing, because when a player is playing on Saturday, he has been tested 2 to 3 times a week by an outside source. So it's not like a coach, your quarterback comes, you find out he's tested positive, and you're like, we're going to play you anyway, son. Don't worry about it. That ain't happening. It's the same group that tests for every SEC school. So they're safe. We got a couple of Facebook Live comments here brought to you by Meldon Law, where you matter most. Our good friend Rick says, is it interesting that Florida and Georgia both have off weeks before they play each other? They do that every year on the schedule, so they stuck to that. Todd says, since a majority of the 70 players that typically dress for travel do not play, do you see that number reduced to help mitigate risk? Great question there. I don't think they're going to decrease the amount of guys you can dress for an SEC game. There's word that they're going to be taking not one plane, but 2 planes to space kids out on road trips. And usually at the hotels, you have a roommate. Word around the SEC is that every kid's going to have their own room. But they're having to, I mean, it's so different now. I mean, the issues that you have to deal with on a daily basis now, being a coach and a player, it's got to be just so stressful and taxing on you.
But the alternative would be not to have to deal with it at all. And I think, and listen, if the case you make is as convincing as I believe it to be, then you need to drive up to Chicago and talk to these people up at the Big Ten and explain to them, because I don't know if they believe you.
Well, that's their own fault.
Well, sure. I mean, it's their
That's their own leadership and not understanding what's out there. I mean, here's the thing.
It's hard to believe, though.
Again, why do I need to go up there? Their own commissioner's kid is playing in our league.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Listen, because you make it seem as if there's no risk whatsoever for these kids, assuming that they're all going to do.
Okay. So, JC, let me tell you this. Before the coronavirus came around, is there a risk anytime on a Saturday or just on a daily practice when a kid puts his helmet on and goes out to practice? Is there a risk?
100%.
Okay. It's just like I saw a video of a high school coach talking to, I think it was the governor in Pennsylvania. He said, we understand there's a risk anytime we walk out there on Friday nights. You know why? Mm-hmm. Because there's an ambulance sitting down by the
That's right.
It's true.
Right. I know.
But my point is, yes, I'm not minimizing the virus at all, but with the age bracket these kids are in,
yes,
and the testing and what's going on and the so-called bubble they're in, I just don't see how any of them can get it now. I really don't.
And it speaks to the idea that if you can have kids on campus going to labs or going to even.
Okay, I'm going to back up there. Word is that in the SEC, the players, football players, well, all athletes will be doing virtual class, which is another smart move by our conference.
Sure.
Not allowing them to go sit in the general population with the other students who are out
I mean, they're going to spend their entire day in the football facility. They're basically all going to be there. And it's, at Florida, I guess they'll find wherever that is because the facility hasn't been built yet for some reason. But at any rate, they're going to be segregated. That's totally true. And the reasoning behind the Big Ten's decision does not hold water if you think about it and use common sense and initiate these protocols that will segregate these players from the general population. And if player has to go back home because grandma got sick and is about to die, or player B has to leave the bubble, so to speak, then that's something that you have to be aware of and figure out what to do. I mean, there was a hockey player, honest to God, there was a hockey player for the Boston Bruins who had a cough. He woke up in the morning. His name was Tuukka Rask. He woke up with a cough, and all of a sudden the entire bubble just about popped because, dear God, he might have the coronavirus. He didn't have anything. He had nothing. He had some allergy or something bothering him that specific morning, but he had to go sit in a room for 3 freaking days by himself before they could figure that out. So there's a lot of extreme behavior going on out there, and I think the fear is way over the top. I just do. Now, granted, I'm not minimizing the fact that 170 or some odd thousand people have died. I would be willing to bet you that number would be almost near to that if there wasn't a coronavirus, because many people who have died had pre-existing conditions that were basically putting them on death's doorstep. You know what they say about the state of Florida, QB? The state of Florida is God's waiting room. Okay, that's what it is. And listen, the demographics defend that. So,
yeah. All right, at Chris Doring Mortgage, they do mortgage lending right, helping home buyers throughout Gainesville and North Central Florida. Call Chris Doring Mortgage today at 352-244-0840. All right, JC, let's get off call. We only got about another 10 minutes or so.
It's flying by, QB, flying by.
Yeah, it is. A lot's going on in the sports world.
Hockey. Yeah, hockey is. I'm really scintillated by hockey. I know NBA is also.
Well, tell me this. I have watched a little bit of hockey, not a whole lot. But is it because they're in a bubble and they're all playing in the same ice rinks? They don't play defense like they do in other. I mean, these high-scoring hockey games. I don't understand it.
Well, yeah, that could have something to do with it. There's certainly no energy in the building at all. I mean, these guys live completely in a bubble. They don't even have the ability to leave the hotel after a game and go to Starbucks across the street. They cannot be near anybody. That was part of the agreement that the players made with ownership in doing these 2 Toronto and Edmonton sites to play. And I think you're right. There's a faster game going on right now. Remember, they've had 3 or 4 months before they started these games to basically heal and rest up from the grind of the regular season. So they've come out on fire, and I would expect many of the basketball players the same way have shown the ability to really amp up the energy. But you're right, defense is something that I think, and just like in football, it feeds off of a more emotional setting that you're in as opposed to maybe the offense, because the offense to me is harder than defense, and defense is more aggressive. So if that makes any sense. And because there's no energy in the building, it might be different for them. But I do think that you're seeing some very entertaining games. Tampa Bay yesterday and Columbus played a great game. Tampa Bay won their series in 5 games, but it was a lot closer than that. And Tampa Bay now moves on in their conference. Boston also won. They finished off actually Tampa Bay played Columbus and Boston played Carolina, and both were good series, but they ended in 5 games, so they move on. And I think it's working for the NHL. I mean, you've got last night a St. Louis team, the defending Cup champions, lose to Vancouver with a 3-1 lead, lose 4-3, and Vegas looks to be probably the best team in the West alongside Colorado. And they are. You're right. That Colorado scored 7 goals last night. I think Arizona just want to get out of the bubble, and I think that's got a lot to do with it too. QB is these guys are living in, it's hard to say harsh conditions because this is not Pakistan, but they are living in a very isolated world right now. And sometimes it's hard to bring it to the ice.
Living in luxury hotels with their own chefs and things of that nature.
No doubt. No doubt.
Facebook Live comment here brought to you by Melton Law, where it matters most. Rick, our good friend Rick says, but Shane, the risk of dying from COVID is unknown, but possible. Not so much for getting hurt in a game. My point was there's a risk in everything we do in life. Yes, we don't know, but the small percentage of athletes dying from COVID is very, very slim. And we don't know a whole lot about it. But my point is
0 almost.
Parents should have the right to allow their kids to play, and the kids should have their rights to play if they want to play. And that's what's going on in the Big Ten right now. So, JC, have you watched any NBA?
I have to say I have not.
Yeah, there's been some tremendous games there. The 1 seeds have both been upset in the first round of the playoffs. In game 1, the Lakers have lost. And then the Magic beat the Bucks the other day. I think they've done a tremendous job, the NBA has. I think it's weird the way they have it set up, but they have those animated fans and stuff. But they've done a great job, I think, for the circumstances.
And I guess baseball, the only thing I would question is why they've had to travel to these empty stadiums across the country.
Makes no sense.
When they could have centralized some of those games, maybe in a dome or something to that effect. But
yeah. You've been watching any of the golf tournaments? Our man,
I love that.
Lost by 1 shot.
Yeah, QB, I'm almost telling you, at my age right now, I was talking to a mutual friend of ours yesterday on the golf course that it seems like the 2 things we watch the most are golf and obviously will be football when it starts. And golf to me has just been spectacular. It has been a very good, successful endeavor. It's unfortunate that there's no galleries, but these players are playing as if there were, and they want to win just as badly as if anybody was watching them because they know they have a huge television audience. And the golf course is still the golf course. The golf course doesn't change whether there's fans or not. Maybe some of the area behind the ropes could change because there's no trampling on it and the balls go that way. But I think some of the big names who have played, Justin Thomas, Brooks Koepka, and some of the new guys we get to hear about who have made a splash like this Morikawa kid, my God, I think that has really given golf a true boost. And in a world where we need something to energize us and to get us going again in terms of sports, golf has done the best. I don't think there's any doubt about it. I mean, I just think that some of these new kids that are playing, along with some of these great players that we've seen already, mixing it up on the course and having this PGA, that was a great finish. It was a great finish by Morikawa, great win for him. That was his second win already. And I think golf has been probably one of the really true success stories through this whole nightmare.
Speaking of golf, the Northern Trust has already teed off this morning up in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
You ever played the TPC Boston there, JC? You ever played that?
No, I can't say I've been to that one. Have you?
No, I never played golf up there. We got a bunch of dudes tied for first at 2 under par. Ian Poulter, Chaz Reavie, Dustin Johnson, Harris English, Billy Horschel.
Yeah.
And, man, I forgot. This is what this top 75 players. So this is the playoffs. So they go from I think 75 this week down to 30 next week, and then the Tour Championship in Atlanta.
Right, a lot of money. It's a lot of money on.
When is the U.S. Open supposed to be played?
I think that's going to be played in September, and I also think that the Masters is still scheduled for November, but without gallery. So
I want to say the Masters.
That's in November.
Yeah, but I remember when the SEC schedule came out.
Yeah.
Heck of a SEC game.
Well, there is Alabama playing LSU that weekend.
That's it.
So that's
got to be a night game, right? It's got to be.
I would assume absolutely.
Well, no, think about it, JC. They can't play the Alabama LSU during the day if the Masters are on.
No, great. And plus it's at LSU, so naturally it's going to be a night game, or it should be. Television will be off.
My point is the Masters is carried by CBS.
Yes.
And
right.
Alabama LSU will be on CBS, so it's going to be a night game.
Yeah, it's going to be a night game for sure. And that's really turning out to be, hopefully, if we get to that point and things are great, really great weekend. And I still think, QB, I really do believe that these November and December games potentially could have a higher capacity of fans allowed as general admission, because I really think that when they play these games, and it's going to be an embarrassment for the Big Ten and Pac-12, but when they play these games and they see how successful things are going to be, and they see that the testing is going to go well for everybody involved, they're going to start letting more people in. I think to this extent that there might be somewhat of you'll actually recognize fans in the stadium. It won't seem like a high school football game. So yeah, I hope that happens.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of no issues with NASCAR, and they've increased their fans from 30,000 to 60,000, a little bit higher. Exactly. I've not heard one issue there. And again, I'm just going by, from my personal thoughts. I don't think any SEC football players are going to miss any games. I really don't.
Well, because of what we've said. But if you go from 20,000 fans at Tiger Stadium to say 40,000 fans, now you've got some sort of atmosphere. If they're all sitting,
I just hope they have the bands, allow the bands just to spread out and take one whole end zone, because that's part of football.
It is, and I know that, but the band members are part of that general population that I know that these presidents and coaches are scared of.
Okay, so you think by having the bands sit in 100-degree temperature in the south end zone that that the players are going to contract the virus during the game?
No, I don't. But I think that the band members coming into this little world of pre-tested, in a pre-tested environment.
What's the difference between the 25,000 fans that they allowed that were over at the Purple Porpoise the night before?
Oh, no, listen, I agree. I just think that the way they're thinking and the way the precautions are being taken, and because of some of the images that we've seen and because of the bad optics of the Big Ten, there's going to be this over this fear of being overcautious as opposed to being taking a lot of risk, however you want to look at it. But I love the bands. I want them to be part of this experience. And I really think we're going to find that after they play 10 conference games, we're going back to 9 at least.
Okay. Last thing, JC, here. This day in sports is brought to you by the Best Restoration. Fires, hurricanes, or leaking pipes, whatever causes havoc in your home or business, call the Best at Best Restoration, 352-353-0768. This day in sports, back in 1991, Miami Dolphins' Dan Marino surpasses Joe Montana as the highest paid NFL player with a 5-year extension for $25 million. Think about that. That's nothing these days.
No, and when Spurrier signed with Washington as their coach, he got 5 years at $5 million per year for $25 million. We all thought that was, massive, which it was, and it is actually. So, but it's nothing compared to what they're signing for today. Yeah.
All right, JC, it flew by.
All right, my man.
Stay safe.
Yeah.
You got your Gator gear on. Go hit them straight today. This show is a wrap brought to you by Wrap Spot. Hey, folks, be safe. Make sure you tune in tomorrow. Follow us, like us, all that good stuff on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care.